So one of the things that I struggled the most with when I started this little YouTube channel was figuring out how to shoot videos of myself and by myself, if that makes sense. And it's definitely something that I'm still working on. It's not something that I've perfected by any means. But in the short time that I've been doing this, I think I've learned a few things along the way, basically just through trial and error, that I think can really help anyone that's looking to start making videos like this. So today, what I want to share with y'all are 8 tips that I've learned along the way of how to better shoot videos alone. So the first tip is to plan things out meticulously. This can seem somewhat basic or straightforward, but planning is a very important part of any video production. And by planning, I don't just mean like planning out what types of shots you're gonna get for B-roll and what kind of color grade you're gonna have or whatever, but it also means planning out each of your shots. What are the sequences going to look like? What is your video going to look like in the end, and have a vision for that before you start shooting it. It's also about planning what you're gonna say, what the subject or the story of the video is about, where you're going to shoot it, what lenses you're gonna shoot it on, and what music you'll use, what kind of feeling you want to invoke in it. All of these things are important considerations when you're planning out any kind of video production process. So when I first started doing things like this, what I would do is basically just have an idea of what I wanted to talk about. I would sit down in front of a camera and just start rambling for sometimes 10-15 minutes at a time. And what I found was when I finished shooting and I would sit down to edit, it would take me hours and hours of just listening to myself talk about nonsensical things. It was like just 10-15 minutes of stream of consciousness spewing into a camera and a microphone. And then eventually I had to sit down and cut all of that up and try to make a cohesive video out of it, out of snippets of things that didn't really connect with each other. But if you have a plan for what your video is going to look like, you can come up with, these are the shots that I need to get. These are the shots and the talking points that I need to hit in order to make sure that I have a cohesive video. And then if you get a little bit extra, if you have a little bit of extra B-roll, if you embellish a little bit on your talking points and talk for a little bit longer, you have the option of using that or cutting that out and sticking to your original plan. But having that plan in the first place allows you to know what you want your video to look like in the end, and then work backwards to get to that result, rather than starting without an end in sight and then just hoping that it all lines up. The second thing that I've found, that is not a comfortable place to sit, but the second thing that I've found that has helped me a lot when creating videos is writing an actual script. For the longest time, I always thought that videos like this, that is just me talking about something in front of a camera, I wanted it to feel natural and like I was actually talking about stuff that I believed in, and that it was actually just me having a conversation. And I thought that having a script would make it feel robotic, or that I would just be reading from a series of lines. What wound up happening was similar to not having a clear-cut plan for what I wanted the video to look like. Not having a script basically just led me to talk about a bunch of random things, right? I had some talking points, but I didn't have a good way to go from one talking point to the next. Without having a script, I found myself just sitting in front of my computer, basically just listening to myself talk in a bunch of rambling segments and then trying to cut together a cohesive sounding video. Now, just because you have a script doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stick to line by line what that script says. But again, having that script and having that structure that you can stick to means that you can get a usable product. If you have some extras, if you embellish a little bit, if you go off script, then great. You might have additional takes that you can use. But having that script and having that structure means that you know you're going to have at least the end product that you imagined before you started the process. And then if that, if something magical happens and you are able to go a different direction with it, great, but you can always have that original plan and original structure and script to stick to. So the third tip that I have is to write breaks into your script. And I know it kind of goes along with, the previous one, which is just to write a script in general. One of the things that has really helped me, especially in the post-production process, but also during the actual shooting process, is writing just like a couple lines at a time and going down to the next one, a couple sentences at a time and going down to the next one. And the reason for this is if you think about back to in school, if you ever had to give a presentation, which I'm sure most of us have, when you're standing there in front of a classroom and you have paragraphs and paragraphs of stuff to try to memorize, it's hard to actually remember, if I talk about this thing, what's the next thing that I'm going to talk about? If you mess up or if you lose your train of thought, it can be really easy to skip whole chunks of what you wanted to say because you have so much to remember. But what building in breaks to your script allows you to do is, let's say, what I'm saying into the camera right now, I stumble on my words and I mess up. Rather than having to start over completely in order to make it seem cohesive, I can start from just 2-3 sentences back. That means for each of these clips that I'm shooting now, it's much easier for me to remember what I want to say, what I want to say next, and then if I mess up, it's also easier to remember where I started or where I left off, right? Whereas if I'm trying to memorize a whole paragraph and then speak it into a camera, then all of a sudden, if I stumble, I have to start back all the way from the beginning, or if I stumble and I don't restart at the right place, all of a sudden the entire thing doesn't flow. The fourth tip that I have is delete your bloopers. So for a video like this, especially for segments like this where it's just talking head stuff, there's really no situation, in my opinion, that you're going to need to keep footage of your messed up lines, or that you'll want to keep footage of, times where you stumble over a sentence or your bloopers. There have been plenty of times where I've sat down to shoot a video like this and maybe I'm saying a couple of lines and I lose my train of thought. What I do is I just stop that clip right there and then I go and start a new clip. But before I start a completely new clip, if I know that what I shot previously is not usable, right? That if I know that I'm gonna restart completely from the beginning, then I'm gonna go back and delete that entire clip. Because here's the thing, if I know that I'm not going to use that clip, if I know that something is entirely unusable, why would I keep it and then copy it over to my computer and then have to review that footage? So my recommendation is if something happens where it renders your clip entirely unusable, just go ahead and delete it. Save yourself the storage, save yourself the time to have to review that unusable clip, and just delete it right then and there, right? It's gonna save storage, it's going to help speed up the editing process, and it's just gonna make everything much smoother. The fifth tip that I have is to shoot your B-roll on a different card or on different media than your primary footage. When you're shooting any kind of video, whether it's a small video or a large project, keeping everything organized can be a huge challenge. If you're shooting on one single SD card and you're shooting both your A-roll, your B-roll, you're shooting interviews, you're shooting talking head stuff, you're shooting everything on one card, and now what you're gonna have to do is go through each and every clip and figure out, well, is this from this interview? Is this from this scene? Is this B-roll? Is this, whatever other type of footage that you might be shooting? And it can be really hard to organize after the fact. But building off of all of the previous points, if you have a plan, if you have a script, if you have an idea of what you want the end product to look like, you can plan how you shoot your footage and on what media you use around that. So what I do is for all of my shots like this, where it's just me talking into a camera or, whatever the subject is talking into a camera, I have that on one card. And then when I want to shoot B-roll, I either switch to a different frame rate, usually a higher frame rate than I would shoot my primary talking head stuff, or I shoot on a different card completely. The sixth tip that I have is to find or create a spot for you to consistently shoot your videos. One of the best things that I've done for myself to help create these videos faster and more cohesively is turn my home office into a pseudo studio that I can very quickly set up a talking head video shot, that I can quickly set up and change the lighting for some B-roll if I wanted to shoot some product stuff or whatever it might be. So if you're fortunate enough to have a space in your home or in your office, somewhere that you can set up for video shooting, then great. Utilize that space so that you have that consistent place that you can figure out, you know, these are the camera shots that work, these are the ones that don't, this is where I set up my camera, this is where I set up my lights and all that stuff. But if you don't have that option, another great way to do it is to simply find a spot out in public that you know is quiet, like where I am now, that you know you can get to quickly, that you know the environment, you can set up a shot quickly as well. Now, if you're someone that is super comfortable talking into a camera and you don't mind doing it out in public, all the more power to you. You can do that as well. But if you're like me and you don't feel very comfortable talking in front of a camera, and much less doing that in front of a crowd or where other people are present, then finding a quiet spot like this that you can use over and over again can really help you get more comfortable and get better at shooting videos of yourself. The seventh tip that I have is to control your lighting when possible. So I just talked about my home office that I use as like a pseudo studio space, right? When we moved into this house, I was very conscious of thinking about where I place my desk and where I place my shelves and decorations and everything to make it so that I can use it as a video space. And I also paid extra attention to being able to control the lighting, the color of the lighting, the brightness of the lighting, and to set up something that was quick and easy for me to set up and break down in order to create this shot. One of the things that I like to do to help control my lighting is to wait until it is completely dark outside. That way, the only light in the room is the light that I can control. Now, if you don't have a space like that and you're shooting videos primarily outside, you should still do everything in your power to try to control that light. Right now, I've got a pretty harsh light in the background, and I know I can see that it's casting this kind of soft flare or glow almost that is kind of covering my face a little bit. I have a ND filter on my camera lens that is currently controlling how much light goes into the lens. This ND filter, to a certain degree, allows me to control how much light I have in the shot. Right now, because it's so bright out, I have it set all the way to the 5-stop setting. And right now it's a visually appealing and usable image. But if I didn't have the ND filter, this is about what my shot is going to look like. See, this isn't very usable. Another way that you can help control your lighting in outdoor environments is by using reflectors and diffusers. These are very cheap pieces of gear. They're just, you know, like basically foldable diffusers that you can get usually for like 30, 40 bucks for a decent one. And you can often get multiple reflectors and diffusers in one single package that you can use in these outdoor environments to help bounce light and to help diffuse light where you want it to. The idea of controlling your light isn't just about getting a visually appealing image. It can also be about using that light and using bright and dark areas to draw focus, to be intentional with where your viewers' eyes are going and what they can and can't see. And what you'll find is a recurring theme that's going to be on this channel is intentionality. If you're doing something, if you're setting up a shot, if you're creating a video, the intentionality behind it helps create a much better end product than if you just set something up and hope that it turns out well. And finally, the 8th tip that I have is to shoot more than you think, but not too much. And I'll explain what that means. So let's talk about B-roll, for example. It can be really easy to just walk around and shoot cool looking shots of B-roll. Get some close-ups, get some far out stuff, get some drone shots, you know, That kind of stuff is honestly, in my opinion, more fun than shooting the regular stuff. But a lot of times you're not gonna need all of that. If you shoot too much, you wind up just creating clutter. You're gonna have to scrub through more footage to find the actual shot that you want. And just because you have a lot of it doesn't mean it's going to make the end result any better. And the same goes with your primary footage, like this type of stuff, this talking head stuff, or an interview. Imagine this, if you're sitting down to create an interview and you just sit someone down and you talk to them for 6 hours straight and you record every single minute of footage, it's going to be so much for you to then go back and watch through all of it and then try to create a story or a narrative out of all of that stuff. The same goes with footage like this or videos like this that are just fairly simple talking head stuff. Shooting too much can make it really difficult to get a cohesive and good end result. But on the flip side of that coin, not shooting enough also makes it impossible to get a finished video at the end of the day. It certainly doesn't hurt to have a couple of options to choose from as far as, different takes that you have. However, if I do that too much, one, it just takes more time to produce a video. It takes more time to shoot a video. It wastes time. And especially if I'm spending extra time shooting stuff that I wind up not using 80% of it anyway, then you're just wasting time at the end of the day. What has really helped me create videos like this is to try to find a balance between shooting too much and shooting too little. Thinking about those things in advance and finding that balance in advance, you'll find will really help you avoid shooting things just for the sake of shooting things. All right, so that was it. Those were my 8 tips for shooting better videos alone. These were all things that I've personally taken away that I've used to help improve the videos that I make when I'm out here shooting by myself, and hopefully they can help you as well. Now, I'm sure I didn't cover everything. These are just a few of the things that I've learned and I've taken away throughout the past year or so of making videos like this that I think have helped me a lot. If there's something that you guys have done that have helped you a lot that you think other people should know about, make sure you leave that down in the comments down below. And of course, if you found this video helpful, hit that like button. If you want to see more photography related content like this, hit that subscribe button and make sure you get the notifications on so you know when the next video comes out. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.